One thing you will need on the sundries list is you will need goggles. Align right. There we go. So goggles are really important when you have dust storms. You need something to keep the dust out of your eyes. Goggles are a very wise investment. You really don't want to go to the playa without them. Definitely have goggles. You can get cheap goggles, you can get nicer goggles. It's not a bad thing to spend up on, especially if you think you might have other uses and applications for it in your life. Also, you can check around your house. You might already have a pair of goggles. You need to make sure you have goggles that actually close off your eyes on all sides and close them off fairly tightly. You don't want to have like safety glasses are not what you're looking for. Because the way the dust works out on the playa, it's very fine. It swirls around. It gets into small crevices and cracks and holes. You're trying to keep that out of your eyes. If you have safety glasses, aren't going to do that at all. If you have goggles that don't really secure around your face properly, then the dust is still going to get in and get into your eyes, and it's not going to be a pleasant experience. Even more important than goggles, though, is a face mask. Here again, you can go cheap or you can go expensive. Expensive is looking at getting something like a full-on respirator. Cheap is looking at just basically getting your standard like N95 dust mask, the same thing you've been wearing all COVID. Only not the face mask ones, but the ones that are kind of stiffer and that actually wrap around your face and fully cover your mouth and your nose, and have to clip the bridge down on your nose, something like that. But that's still fairly cheap to get, especially if you're traveling with somebody or can basically just use one or two out of a set and save the others for other uses, right? Really important. The playa dust, when you have a dust storm, it's not good to breathe in. The fine particles of the dust, especially the finer dust, is really damaging to the lungs. It will actually literally tear holes in the alveoli of the lungs and can cause lung health issues. And if you breathe a lot of that stuff in, you're going to be coughing it up a lot after you leave playa. You might even get pneumonia, depending on how much it fucks up and disrupts the innards of your lungs. So you don't really want to breathe this stuff in. If you can help it, you're going to breathe it in, but you don't want to breathe as much of it in as you possibly can. If you have sensitive lungs, if you have lung issues, then you probably want to go the full-on respirator route, where your nose and mouth are pretty much sealed from the natural environment, and all your air is coming in through those big, honking big air filters, right? To keep particularly the fine particles out of your lungs. If you got asthma or something like that, then going with the full respirator is probably what you want to do. So you want to spend up on your mask. Alternative to buying these masks is you can buy like a baklava or scarves and learn how to properly fashion those around your face to help keep the dust out. That's what I did for 2017, and it worked fairly all right. Although my baklava tying skills were pretty shit, if I have to be honest. All right, another thing, this is optional, is a bike. I'll do another thing on bikes later, but you're looking at around $60 is the low end for bikes. You could spend more, but it's not necessarily worth it. It is worth it having a bike. Bikes are great ways to get around playa. Bear in mind, though, that if you're going to be on playa for a week, by the end of the week, your $60 bike is going to be trash. It's going to be done. It's going to be crap. It can be repaired. You replace the crankcase and things like that. There are ways to revitalize bikes after they've been on playa, and there's a company that does a Reno Bike Project. I'll type that out here. Very much worth looking up if you are going to Burning Man. The caveat with a bike, though, is that if you're going to be taking the Burner Express bus, you have to have a way of acquiring that bike before you get on the bus, and you have to pay extra to get it transported on to playa with the Burner Express bus. But that's pretty much covered in that $200 for the Burner Express bus ticket, so that probably won't be an issue for extra cost. Yeah, $60 is what to plan on, but you also have a few other things that you need to buy if you're going to have a bike. You need to have a bike lock, so if you don't have one, you'll have to buy one. Bike locks are really important because people will steal your bike. And it's not even like they're stealing their bike. They might even just fucking mistake your bike for being their bike and ride off on your bike thinking it's their bike. And I mean, shit happens. Um, Two, especially when people's brains are plyified, it really starts happening. But two, you also want to have your bike decorated, and so that's an extra little cost. You know, having lights to put on it is really super important. If you don't have lights to bring with you from, say, a bike you already have here, you'll want to buy some lights to bring with you because it's a major safety issue. It's also really vital to being able to fucking find your bike at night when you lay it down somewhere in the playa and then walk off to look at this thing and then wander off to look at that thing and you're like, where the fuck is my bike? In the dark, you're going to have a hard time finding it. Another safety issue there is the mutant vehicles driving around the playa. They only go 5 miles an hour, but if you don't have any lights on you, they might still run you over and you would get hurt. Or they might run over your bike and then your bike would get hurt and possibly their mutant vehicle would get hurt. That would all be bad. So lights are really important. Decorations are really important because they help you to not lose your bike. So there's our extra expenses. You might actually go ahead and assume $100 here for a bike. Again, I'll talk more about bikes elsewhere. They are a worthwhile thing, though. So it's not money poorly spent, but it may not be money you want to spend, depending on how everything else shakes out. Decorations, I didn't put a price in here. This is basically just like whatever you do. And that's decorations for your bike. That's decorations for you. That's just decorations, making it look good, making yourself look good. Shelter. If you don't already have a tent, you will need a tent for Burning Man. You need some kind of shelter. You need some way of sleeping. You can research this and you might find some different options you can explore. You may have something already that's going to work for you and just needs an extra little thing. But you can get a tent for $25. You can get a tent for $100. You can get a tent for $400, whatever. Tents come at all different kinds of prices. The one thing I'll say, if you are going to go the tent route, you need to make sure that you have tent stakes that are really solid, and by tent stakes that are really solid, what I really mean are tent stakes that are rebar, like 1.5 foot long rebar that are bent, or that you have a tennis ball capping off the end of it so that your campmates don't stab their feet on it. There's a reason I'm pulling up this photo right now, and I don't think this is a photo that has it in it that you can see, but I have some photos of dust devils like these ripping through Black Rock City, not over the open playa, but through the actual main part of the city. And then you can see swirled up in the air, caught up in the dust devils, are people's fucking tents because they weren't properly secured. Anyway, so like I was saying, you're gonna buy a tent. Okay, great. You need a tent. You need something to sleep in, something to shelter in. Oh, you need a sleeping bag, right? That's another item that you might need to purchase. Basically, you need a way to be warm at night while you're sleeping and reasonably sheltered. It's not entirely necessary to have a tent. It's helpful. It's nice. It has its advantages. So a tent, shelter, a sleeping bag for sure. You need a sleeping bag and ground pad to keep yourself warm at night. So these are extra expenses you may have to incur if you want to go to Burning Man, if you don't already have this type of stuff. And you need to secure that tent because, as I said, it will get ripped up by the wind and blown all over the playa and be gone. And then you'll be super sad faced for the rest of your burn because you no longer have a tent and you contributed to mooping all over the playa. And that makes everybody sad. Food. Cooler. I mean, you don't have to buy a cooler. I use a cooler because it usually gets very hot out there, and I have usually some raw meat or some veggies with me that I'd like to keep fresh. Possibly some other things I'd like to keep relatively fresh. So a cooler is a part of your expense, which, by the way, ice is also a part of your expense for the cooler. I forgot to add that in here. But ice is one of those things where you can share a little bit with other people on the expense and help keep it down. But you can get a cooler for about $15. It's not too expensive. and keep your food fresh in it. A stove. Hey, you gotta have a way to cook your food, right? If you're gonna be cooking food, you need to have a way to cook your food. This is something you can buy before you go, but then you like need to be able to acquire gas for it there, because you can't really take gas canisters on the plane. That's a bad idea. It's very dangerous, potentially very lethal for you and everybody else on the plane. But stoves. So type of stove you can buy that's really simple and useful, and a worthwhile investment also for just generally having back home. To do. So these single burner ranges like this are really great. I have one. They do a great job cooking things. I cooked on one of these for a year, and when I lived in Japan, because I didn't have, I had an electric stove in my little apartment, but it worked like shit. So I bought one of these because they work better. You'll have to buy the gas cans there, and you really only need like one gas can, so you might have to figure out an environmentally friendly, kosher way to pass off the rest of those gas cans. But $20 for one of these, right? For a single burner. And this is great if you're going to be camping with a couple of people. Two people could split this one. It's going to be a group of 4 people, maybe. Then 4 y'all with 2 of these would set you up. So that's your stove option right there. And then was there anything else? There was one more thing on here. Oh, that was just the total cost. So if you're like super budgety and you're really keeping it cheap, you can come in under $200 on your supplies. If you have to spend up or decide to spend up, you can go over $200 on your supplies. There are other things in here that I haven't factored in, like if you need a sleeping bag, for example. Yeah. So that gives you an idea of some of the supplies you need and the cost and the budget. And that's your $1,500 Burning Man trick. So $500 again for the ticket, $400 for your plane, $200 to get on and off Playa with Burner Express bus, or about $100 if you take another option. Another thing you might do is take this other option for $100, but also like bunk down with some people in a hotel room for a night before you leave Reno, if you can get some connections or what have you. There's some things you can do there. It's helpful if you can get around in Reno and do your shopping in Reno before you go to the playa, but after you get off the plane. And the Burner Express bus has an option for doing that, but it's not always the easiest option. So there's a little bit of fidgeting around there that you might want to do. Food and water, $200. I don't see you getting out for much cheaper than that, especially if you're properly trying to feed yourself, and you definitely want to properly try to feed yourself. If you try to be on Playa and not have any food or water of your own, you're fucked. You're pretty much fucked. People are going to be pissed at you. Literally, people will be mad at you. They won't let you die, but they might leave you in a situation where you basically are starving and thirsty, and your only option is to leave the playa because they're not going to take care of you. Nope. There is some people who they serve food, and so you can get like free meals on the playa. Well, because everything's free on the playa except for ice and coffee. But don't bank on it. Don't rely on that. Bring your own food. Bring your own water. You have to if you're going to survive out there. Nobody else is going to bring it for you. And then your various sundries, another $200 or so for that. And this can be less or more depending on what you have already around the house and what you need. Oh, another item I left off of here. You need basically a cup of some kind that's durable, that's reusable for drinking out of, both for yourself as well as if you at camp, as well as if you go off somewhere and they're serving alcohol and you want some alcohol. Well, guess what? If you don't have your own cup, you are fucking tough shit out of luck. They are not going to serve you alcohol in some fucking solo cup. No, 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 no. They won't do that. If you don't have your own cup with you, you're not going to get served, whatever beverage it is. Same thing with food. If they have some sort of food item and you don't have your own little bowl or plate with you, eating utensils with you, you are not going to get served. So you need to have your own plate and bowl and eating utensils. So you can buy those. There are expensive options on camping sites for those things. There are cheap options on camping sites for those things. You may have some options already around your house for those sorts of things that you can take with you. Get creative, be creative, but definitely bring your own eating utensils as well. So that's fork and knife and spoon, bowl, plate, and mug to eat out of and drink out of. Alrighty, there you go. So that's a $1,500 Burning Man trip. Um, Boom.